if aliens were going to come to this world, they could blow us away in a second.
If they wanted us gone, it would have been done in like that.
Right.
You know, we've killed hundreds of millions of people of our own species in the last 100 years. We're the problem,
Right.
not the interstellar civilizations. Oh yeah, everyone's going, oh, I'm so afraid. I said, yeah, take a look in the mirror, you want to see what to be afraid of.
Damizza presents Holy Shit!
I'm Dr. Stephen Greer. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Niggas hot cause they know they can't knock the hustle. Chase paper day. Niggas talk but they know they can't stop the hustle.
Oh my God!
I mean, people are ridiculous to think we're the only civilizations out there.
And we're the smartest people on the entire...
I was at the Vatican some years ago, and the senior theologian for the Pope turned to me, Monsignor Balducci.
Oh dear.
And he was a cool guy.
Wait, say that one more time.
Monsignor Balducci. I know, and he's just like tall guy, and he's like this in his 70s, and he turns and he says, he looks at me and he says, it would be a great shame if God had put all his hopes in intelligent life in humans. And then he said, and he was hilarious. We were talking about, hey, I said, so many people are trying to portray these ETs as scary. He says, nah. He says, lower than humanity, there cannot exist in the entire universe. It's so spoken like a Vatican theologian.
But okay, so that too. What is the difference between ET and the word alien?
Yeah, I mean, I like the word ET because alien gets confused with someone who's come across, is like from another country or something. Also, alien just means, the word, if you look alien, it means foreign or other. And I like to say they're extraterrestrial people, and they're conscious, and they're living, and they're people like we are. Now, they may be very different in a lot of ways, but, at one time...
Do ETs have, families and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And they raised the same way?
Well, they're all different. They're all different. Like, when we did the autopsies on the ETs that were from the Roswell
what's the
thing.
little dude?
We found they had a reproductive organ for the males, but it was very different from ours. So I mean, they have bodies and they have lives, but they're very different. But the thing that's the same is that they're conscious and awake, and we're conscious and awake, and that's the point of commonality.
That's what I want to know. Did they scare the shit out of Truman and just say, look, we need to create this black ops shit?
No, I think Truman was fully in favor of keeping it secret till we knew what we were dealing with. Once they realized from World War II on with the Foo Fighters was first UFOs in World War II. Well, no, they named Dave Grohl named the band after the information from the Foo Fighters in World War II, which were UFOs that were seen zipping all around our aircraft. So we knew about this going way back, and so we started studying it covertly in the U.S. Government and other governments, Germany during World War II. And they didn't want the public to know because they didn't really know how these amazing...
So was it manipulating gravity? Is that what the whole thing was about how they propelled?
Yes, they're running off of... And this is you get to why is it secret?
Yeah.
Here's a big part of it. If it's disclosed that these UFOs are real, and they are, anybody who's a scientist or a technology person is going to say, how the hell are they operating? Because they're going at several 100,000 miles an hour and take a right-hand turn or go straight up and down.
Well, we've all seen UFOs.
Okay, so how are they doing this? They're doing it through what's called gravity control. So these objects can go beyond the speed of light out of 3D space into, you call it hyperspace or other dimensions, to another point in the universe, maybe 1 million light years from here. But when they're in this dimension moving around, the energy source is something called the 0-point energy field, which is the baseline of energy that all matter, that everything exists from.
Well, I think you said the key. The word is energy.
Gravity becomes something that essentially goes away because they can cause this whole spacecraft and everyone in it to attain masslessness. They have no weight, even though they're sitting they'd be outside your backyard and they're just floating there.
So G-force disappears.
G-force disappears, all that disappears. Wow. So it's like in a fighter jet, if you're going, at Mach 2 and stop suddenly, your brains are going to come out of your nose, splash on the windshield. That didn't happen with these, and they're going 100 times that speed. However, if it was disclosed It would mean the end of oil, the end of gas, the end of public utilities, the end of ExxonMobil, the end of
controlled, like even the Catholic Church.
hundreds of trillions of dollars of assets would vanish. And at the same time, power would go back to the people. What do I mean by that?
Yeah.
And this is really what the
But
secrecy
that's
is
what the
about.
question is.
I know, but I'm trying to get you have to connect one or two dots to get there. So here's the thing. If you have, right now you have a group of global elites
Right.
who really run the whole frickin' planet, and there's not that many of them, a couple hundred. Those folks would become relatively unimportant if you and all of us had the ability to have our own energy source, travel source, and even manufacturing with zero cost and without a supply line going to oil tankers and public utilities.
So they don't want to disrupt that.
So the power elites don't want to lose their power. They want to hold on to power. And I always tell people, basically, we're all slaves living on someone else's plantation. All right? So the U.S. plantation is doing... No. The U.S. plantation is doing better than the Nigerian plantation. However, we're all slaves living on someone else's plantation. And that masters and slaves dynamic, which is a holdover from ancient times and the 1800s, is still operating today. Most people don't realize it. So in the United States, the power isn't sitting in the White House or the Congress. It's sitting in a group of folks who are inside government, but also inside big tech corporations who don't want this to change. They don't want the technology out, because the technology meets power is going to go back to the people. Really, it's going to go back. Where every single home and village is going to be self-sufficient. So when you think of what a UFO is nothing but an alternative energy and power source, all right? And when you look at these zero-point energy devices that are within them, that are at the core, like we have an Air Force officer in the film Unacknowledged talking about this rectangular thing about this big that you can power a city or your wristwatch off of, that they took out of one of these crashed extraterrestrial craft. That was studied and reverse engineered, figured out how it was working in the 40s and 50s. And so by 1954, we didn't need fossil fuels, jets, cars, rockets. It's all been obsolete. Now, so why the hell aren't we using this stuff?
Because it keeps the machine going.
Okay, here, rage against the machine. The machine and the man and the elites don't want this to come out. So they make all these cartoons and ridicule the whole extraterrestrial issue. And
while still feeding it to us.
While still feeding us to it in a frightening way. Now, what's all the fear stuff about? I mean, that's the other
part. That's the question,
okay,
though.
that's the second part of the
But that's what I was asking is look, obviously they're a higher intelligence and they're a greater energy, right? So if we were a threat, or if they were to be a threat, it would have been done by now.
Absolutely.
So there's no question.
There's no problem that.
So it's man-made, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it's. But how? Let's look at one other thing. What's been the organizing principle of society for thousands of years?
Well, you go to organize religion.
No. War. Us versus them.
Right.
One religion against another, one race against another, one economic system, capitalism versus communism or social. So we've been fighting wars for thousands of years on an us versus them sort of mindset. Right. All right. But now you what they're wanting to do is eventually introduce another them, but in a way that's frightening. So
that they
so this is why you'll see in the film General MacArthur in 1955, the year I was born. I ain't no spring chicken. It said that World War III would be interplanetary. Ronald Reagan at the UN said, wouldn't our job of creating world peace be easier if we had a common alien threat to unite against and fight?
Well, he said that to Gorbachev, too.
And so what they're wanting to do is do two things. Keep the technologies hidden for their own use, while all the rest of us are scurrying around in relative poverty. I don't care if you're a billionaire, you're in relative poverty compared to this stuff. And then number two, they want to be sure that when it does come out, people have been brainwashed through movies like Independence Day and other things, that there's a threat out there.
Right.
Because they want to unite the world around a common alien threat, which doesn't exist. Newsflash. One of the
but
things...
that's the point I'm getting to,
Yeah.
is exactly that. If they were a threat, we would have seen that by now.
It would be all over.
Right. But that's the point that I'm trying to make, especially to, for instance, the inner city that is trying to understand what this is.
The mistake that everyone makes is that the government that we see on CNN or on whatever network, Fox, is actually in control over all this stuff. That's a myth. It does not exist. So this kind of permanent bureaucracy, it kind of does what it damn well wants. And if they want to tell a president, they will. If they don't, they won't, or they'll tell them a half-truth. Like with Ronald Reagan, they told them, oh yes, there are extraterrestrials out there, but they're a threat, and we want a few $100 billion to build Star Wars. That's how they played Ronald Reagan. So it's all about how they can manipulate these politicians and the public through the media. Now let's go to another myth. The media.
Yeah.
All right? Now, the media, we have in this film, unacknowledged, an Air Force intelligence officer who states on the record that he would carry bags of cash to people in the media to buy them off, to get them to say things to the public on this UFO issue and on other issues as well. And it's counterintelligence. That's what counterintelligence is. So everyone thinks we have a free press. That's another myth.
Right.
So the fact that we have an operating democracy, myth. Free press, myth. And here's the other one, big one, huge. Peter Thiel, are you listening? That we have a free market economy. We don't. Because mainstream organizations, scientific organizations have said there are 5,135 patents that have been seized and kept secret by national security orders. Well, it is like the Congress and the president is approving all those seizures. There's a bureaucracy. So let's say that you're a guy at MIT and you discovered this 0-point energy field and create a device that would run everyone's home on free energy. So you have no power bill. Hello, this is fantastic. Guess what? These Nazis are going to kick your door in, and they're going to have a national security order, and they're going to say, we're seizing this technology, and you are under a gag order. And if you speak of it, you're going to go to prison and be fined millions of dollars. Now, this is not a conspiracy theory. This is mainstream knowledge, except it's not reported on CNN, and it's not reported on NBC or Fox or any of the media. So the public needs to know that there are basically two governments. There's the government that is portrayed in the media, and then there's this unacknowledged special access system government that's very black and very secretive. And it's not a conspiracy theory. This is what we're going to prove. Because we have now whistleblowers coming forward giving us all the information on it. And so the brainwashing has happened for decades. I mean, there's almost
It's
no
conditioning.
one. It's conditioning to the fact that there has to be a threat from outer space, because they want to grow the military-industrial complex so that it's not just one group fighting another on this planet, but it's all of humans fighting interstellar civilizations.
Well, when Eisenhower said, watch out for my homeboys,
yeah.
it's like, wait a minute. Like, okay, you're a general saying, watch out for these guys.
He says, beware the military-industrial complex. And he wasn't talking about the normal people in the military.
Right.
I mean, I've done briefings for the CIA director, generals, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is as big as the CIA, but it's in the Pentagon, the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the head of the Ministry of Defense in Great Britain, all those people. And every one of those people that I briefed didn't know anything about this subject.
But let me ask you a
because
question.
there is a deeper sort of unacknowledged, and this is where the movie's title comes from, Unacknowledged Special Access Project, USAP. Memorize it, Unacknowledged Special Access Project. So these unacknowledged special access projects are so deep black that even when Clinton, who's CIA director I briefed, asked about this, he was basically told, buzz off, we're not going to tell you. Jimmy Carter was told by the CIA director at the time, when he got elected, George Bush Sr., that he would not be told about this issue. Because that was the very first thing Jimmy Carter asked about, because Jimmy Carter saw one of these UFOs, and I have his report when he was governor of
I saw it.
Georgia. So I think that people have to understand there's two governments here, at least two.
But wait, that's what I'm getting into.
Yeah.
Is there is compartments above the president,
Yeah,
Like-
at least
like-
20 compartments beyond the president.
and that's military control.
And I have 800, 900 of those people who are in those compartments on my team. Now, in the early days, I did think that, oh, well, if I take this to the president, which I got access to, or folks like the Rockefellers, or the CIA director, I thought those guys would do something. And then I learned they ain't going to do shit. We're going to do it. And that's what I've been saying for a long time. For the last 20 years, what I've been saying is, we the people, as Jefferson said, have to organize and make this change happen. We did it for the civil rights era. We did it for gay rights. We did it for women's rights. We've done it for a lot of issues. We have to do it on this. If anything happens to me, I have enormously incriminating
But that's what I mean.
information that's offshore, all over the world, in secure locations. So they know just not to do that. The guy who invented the rocket for Adolf Hitler, Werner von Braun, on his deathbed, and his assistant is in this film, unacknowledged, talking about this, said that they would first have the Cold War, then global terrorism, but the final card they're going to play is the threat from the alien threat from outer space, and it's all a lie. And she says over and over again, it's all a lie.
To create the New World Order.
To create a unified global military junta that people are cowed into. Look what happened after 9/11.
Yeah.
People took complete leave of their senses.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone was like stampeded by fear into giving up their freedom, their liberty, in exchange for security.
Yeah.
All right? And I didn't know this. Now, when I first met with the CIA director, I will admit, I mean, I was pretty naive.
That was pretty nuts, though. You probably had to compare some interesting notes.
I said, well, I don't understand why I'm a civilian and I'm a medical doctor. I've never been in the government. Why am I briefing the director of the CIA on this?
That was the first question I asked.
And he said, because they know you understand it. And I had put together a lot of evidence. And the CIA director and the president are being denied access. Now, I didn't believe this. I thought this was a baloney. Frankly, I thought it was bullshit.
Well,
Excuse my
anyone
French.
would.
Well, you would. I said, well, you know, he's a spy. He just wants to pick my brain. Not true. I got to the meeting. It was quite obvious that the CIA director had been completely cut out of the loop, as had the president, Clinton. When Jimmy Kimmel asked Obama
Oh, yeah.
about this, and he said, yes, that's what they tell us to say,
Yeah.
that it doesn't happen, he laughed, and everyone laughed with him, but he was
Right.
telling the truth.
Oh, dude, you could tell.
Okay, yeah, you could tell.
From his smirk. It was like,
yeah. They don't want you to know, because if you are in favor of disclosing it, they don't want you to know. And if you were to disclose it, it'd be the end of big oil, pollution, and the petrodollar system, all poverty on Earth. And isn't that a good thing? Except the global elites who are feeding like parasites off the rest of us, they'd be out of business. They'd be out of business very quickly.
that's the other thing that
the
gets
heads
me
of
is
royal
why didn't-
families and
why
stuff
didn't
like that.
some of these other people step forward and be like, yo, here's the deal?
They don't want to be ridiculed. You know,
But if you got proof of this
It
stuff,
doesn't matter, because the mainstream media is on the payroll of the CIA, and they're going to make you a laughing stock. So here's I had a
yeah, if the Queen of England steps up and said, hey, by the way, there's UFOs.
they're just going to say she's senile, right? Because she's 90 years old.
Well, what is the quickest way
so-
to devalue anything?
Yes.
You call it crazy.
You call it crazy, you ridicule the person, and you diminish them.
Right.
So
Well, I mean, you can look at gays
it was-
or any of that kind of stuff. Oh, he's gay.
Yeah.
So
it was very, very hard for me as a doctor to be public. You know, back in the 90s when I was on, there was a show called Larry King Live.
Oh, yeah.
He had a special on this. And I'm working full time as a doctor. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's the end of my career. And then there was the guy who was the head of surgery there. He was this crudmudgeon, very, very conservative, you know, tough, kind of unhappy guy. And like the next day, I was going to a code blue in the ICU. Someone had died and we were resuscitating him. And he gets on the elevator with me, looks around, be sure nobody's looking. And he looks at me, he says, I think what you're working on is the most interesting and important thing in the world, and you keep it up and don't give up. And then the door opened, and he looked around to be sure nobody was around, that he was talking to me, and dashed off.
Well, but
so
that's even
it's like
going-
so many people are interested in this and in the closet in it. But the
But
reason,
you said the key word closet.
But the
look,
reason-
look,
but the
look,
reason
even
they're- but
like
listen.
going back to gay stuff.
But yeah,
like
but-
even in the closet, they think, oh my God, but you find more people relate to
That's
you.
what
if
I'm
you're
saying.
just
You
fucking
can
human.
look. You can be Bruce Jenner, but you can't be open about this, because the reason is there's 60, 70 years of intensive ridicule that's been funded through the media and through movies and everything else, so that if anyone takes this seriously, they're just called a lunatic
Wacko.
or a kook or a wacko. And that's been done very deliberately. I have a CIA document from the 50s describing this is what they're going to do.
Protocol.
So yeah, here's how you do it. We're gonna debunk it. We're gonna ridicule it. We're gonna make people look like whatever fools if they think this is real. So that's very effective.
Yeah.
Because most people are still kind of like in junior high and high school, where they're worried that their peer group is going to make fun of them.
Right.
Right.
But it's easier to believe
Yeah.
that there's ET contact and there is actually something greater than us
Right.
than there is to believe in Jesus floated down and said, oh, I'm going to come back someday.
Well, I don't know. I don't have frankly, I don't have a problem with either. But I'm more interested in the truth than I am, the status quo of anything. I think we're at least 100 years past the time when people need to grow up on understanding the true nature of our government and science and religion and all these things. And I think we have to go into sort of a post-human future where we become an interplanetary future. And that's
An interplanetary citizen.
and an interplanetary society. And that's where we're headed. But it's being stopped by people who don't want us to make that big change. Because, we went from tribes to city-states to nations to sort of this global, interconnected
From the
world.
steam engine to digital.
Yeah, and so now the big next step is from interglobal, interplanetary. And that should have happened.
What do you think the catalyst will be for that?
You and me.
That's my dog.
Yeah, you and me and everyone listening. Yeah. All right, so the catalyst of the people getting this and doing something about it.
Oh shit.
Yeah, this is really cool stuff.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That's fucking crazy.